And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, and now for your marine forecast. Forecast issued Saturday, April 12th. Starting out with our sea ice edge today, there's just not a whole lot of advance or retreat going on right now. We're basically at a maximum. There have been northerly winds, and so there has been a little bit of surge in the eastern sections toward the south, but really not a whole lot going on, and we're just waiting for a sea state and a southerly wind bringing warmer temperatures to start a retreat. So, let's start with tonight's weather. First of all, a very cold upper high over that 978 millibar low that you see there off of Cape Newenham. That's going to shape up toward early morning right there. And what it's doing is it's right on the Gulf side right now. It's going to cross the Alaska Peninsula and then move over to that section. Lots of northerly wind behind the low, and then northwesterlies ahead of that first cold front. And then there's a secondary system, 991 millibars, south-southeast of Kodiak Island. Warm air out ahead of that system, southeasterlies in the northern part of the Gulf and southerlies in the southern part. And all this changes very, very rapidly tomorrow. First of all, we're going to start to see some maritime thunderstorms. Really good possibility. It's not dead certain, but it's with such cold air aloft and warm air out over the Gulf that it's highly likely that we're going to see that, and they're going to be toward the southeast of Kodiak Island, and the area of the greatest likelihood will be pretty far offshore. Nonetheless, that is working its way up into the Gulf. 979 millibar low just off of Kodiak Island. Full occluded front forms around that low. Cold air surging to the south of that, and then a secondary cold front surging south of the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians for lots of snow showers behind that, and pretty good pressure gradient for some maritime winds that we'll be talking about in just a moment. Then by Monday, that low slows down a lot and also starts to weaken. The area of most likely for thunderstorms will be off of Yakutat, just to the southwest of Yakutat. There is a slight possibility that some of those cells could move onshore. In the meantime, a cold front now has worked its way into the eastern Gulf, full occluded front around that, plenty of maritime snow showers on the southwest quadrant of that low. Also, plenty of snow showers out the Alaska Peninsula and in the Bristol Bay and Kuskokwim Bay waters as well. So, let's start with our marine forecast for southeast Alaska. On the inside waters tomorrow, winds ranging from about 25 to 30 knots with gusts to 40, northerlies in Lynn Canal, but southeasterlies for Clarence Strait and the middle inside passage. So a pretty good sea state will build up in there. On the outside, we've got gales everywhere, including whole gale easterlies coming out of Cape Spencer and then off of Cape Suckling as well. Seas up to 24 feet. For Monday, now that circulation around that low, and there's still some gale force in the northern sections on the outside, seas up to 15 feet, gusts to 50 in the southeasterlies off of Cape Suckling, and then some onshore winds as you get further south down to 25 to 20 knots, and seas up to about 11 feet off of Prince of Wales Island. On the inside, all southerlies, 20 to 25 knots, seas up to 9 feet in Clarence Strait, otherwise 5 feet in Lynn Canal and 3 feet elsewhere. For south central, storm force winds, easterlies, with seas up to 19 feet and 50 knots south of Cape Hinchinbrook and off of Cape Clear, and then across Prince William Sound, easterlies 40 knots, seas 9 feet. Gale force 35 northeasterlies down south of Seward, and 40 knots through Kennedy Entrance and off of Augustine. And in the upper Cook Inlet, 30 to 35 knots, seas up to 10 feet. Then on Monday, things start to ramp down a little bit. Still gale force, 35 knots, seas 16 feet off of Hinchinbrook and near Cape Suckling. 30 knots in Prince William Sound, northerlies off of Cape Clear, about 30 knots, seas 17 feet. Some of that is going to be residual swell from the strong system that came up, but it's really on the backside of that low that I was describing earlier on Monday. Then northwesterlies through Kennedy Entrance, 30 knots, seas 15 feet, and then Cook Inlet, variable directions, but mostly northwesterlies, 20 to 25 knot small craft advisory, and seas up to 6 feet. For the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island waters, we've got easterlies 35 knots off of Kodiak, but then northerlies through Chillicothe Strait, 25 knots, seas 6 feet, small craft, and then southwesterlies off of Sitkinak Island, 25 knots, seas 7 feet. As you get down to False Pass, the westerlies kicking in behind that system, 40 knot gales, seas 10 feet, and on the Bering Sea side, seas up to 17 feet, but only lighter winds in Bristol Bay, 10 knots, seas 6 feet, and 20 knots off of Perryville, seas 6 feet. Then on Monday, things have, just about everybody's got a westerly component except down off of False Pass, which is responding to the next weather system that's moving up from the south. But the main story is generally small craft winds, advisory winds, 20 knots in Chillicothe Strait, otherwise 25 to 30 knots. On the Pacific side, seas as large as 13 feet, but without fetch distance, ramping down as you get further south. And then seas up to 9 feet as a southwesterly swell going into Bristol Bay, 7 feet off of Coal Bay. For the Aleutian chain, starting out, we've got 40 knot winds, northwesterlies behind that system that forms up on Sunday. And then as you get further out, the winds gradually die off to the middle Aleutians, but then start picking up to northeasterlies 20 to 25 knots as you get into the far western Aleutians, responding to the next weather system. And then for our Monday, now the winds are all responding generally to that system that will be coming up from the south. Winds 30 to 35 knot gales, and then farther west, still got some westerly component and about anywhere 15 to 25 knots. Seas up to 10 feet on the Pacific side and up to 9 feet on the Bering Sea side. For the west coast, generally a northerly component of the winds until you get down to Bristol Bay. 35 knot gales for the Pribilofs, seas up to 12 feet, 30 knots near St. Matthew, and 30 knot winds up along the ice and right on up to Norton Sound with 30 knots. And then for Monday, winds really back off in the northern sections, only 10 knots, 15 to 20 knots, generally with a westerly component further south, seas up to 5 feet for the Pribilofs, 3 feet for St. Matthew, and 4 feet for Bristol Bay. Now for the Arctic coast, polar easterlies really have kicked in, up to 30 knots north of Kaktovik, 20 knots all the way down to the Chukchi Sea, and then as you start getting toward the Bering Strait, wind backs off to 10 and then ramps up again to 20 to 25 knots as you get further south. And then for Monday, again 30 knots in the polar easterlies off of Kaktovik, and 25 as you get further west, then to 20 to 25 knots in the Chukchi Sea. Then as you approach the Bering Strait, 10 knots and then 20 knots, a little bit of westerly component off that Shishmaref, and then as you get a little bit further south, 20 knots off of Gambell and right down through the Bering Strait. So that's it for your marine forecast. Be sure to let somebody know if you're going out and where you're going and when you expect to be back. And please be safe out there. Thanks for tuning in.